Hello, this is Barry Schnell with Technology Foundation Group, and this is a tutorial demo of the Technology Foundation Group Collapsible Wrapper custom component. There's been some discussion in the Squid community recently about adding more configuration options to field editor sections, the title, if you will, on those sections, and also the need to have the wrapper component to have the ability to have section headers or wrapper headers themselves, very similar to the way field editor sections work. And this component, the Technology Foundation Group Collapsible Wrapper custom component, is gold at solving for that need. What you'll see here on the screen is a standard account page, if you will, with a contact section below, built using a standard account detail page. And it looks very much like a screen would look if it had a field editor with 3 different sections at the top: the basics, the owner info, and the system information. However, in this case, this is actually 3 custom components of the collapsible wrapper, with the basics containing 1, the owner info, and the system info. Each of those is a collapsible wrapper, and within that collapsible wrapper is a separate field editor. What this allows you to do is actually customize the actual header of that area with more specificity than you would if you were using a field editor section. Also at the bottom down here, you'll see that the contacts area is another collapsible wrapper, and inside of that is a table, a SKU table. So the collapsible wrapper looks and works and behaves almost identical to the standard Squid wrapper. So you'll find it in your components bar under TFG components in the collapsible wrapper. Once you've installed the TFG custom component pack, you would just drag your collapsible wrapper in, and then from there you can add any components to that you desire or need. The collapsible wrapper has a number of different configuration options, as I mentioned, with regards to the way the header itself works. And you can see on this page, the basics on page load here opens initially open with a header that's collapsible. The owner info is not collapsible, and the system info is collapsible, and it's collapsed by default, as well as the contacts also is collapsible, but it's collapsed by default. To see how that works, let's go into the collapsible wrapper custom component. You can see the properties that are available to you. The basics is showing the header is yes, and the model is the account, and we are initially open. The owner info is also showing the header, but it is not collapsible. And the system info is showing the header, and it's initially collapsed. The same with the contacts area. It is showing the header, and it's initially collapsed. When you get into some of the advanced features, what we'll see as we move forward here is that when you show the header, you actually have the options of choosing no to not show a header, yes to show a header, or conditionally, and I'll walk through that here in a minute. If we go to the back to the demo page and open up the contacts window, one other feature that the wrapper exposes is actions. So within the model itself on contact, you can see that we've got it set to not load data on page load. However, we've configured the wrapper in the actions area on the first time the wrapper opens to query the model contact so that we load the data. This provides us very similar functionality to tabs and other portions of the Squid framework that allow you to load when certain actions begin or occur. However, in the past, there was no way to do this, or you're a little bit limited in how you could do this on a page. Now you can just have a collapsible section, and when the section opens, you can go ahead and load the data, and then obviously the wrapper will open and display the table. You can see that the various events in here are before the first open, after the first open, before any open, after any open, before any close, and after any close. And you can configure those using the action framework just like you would in any other Squid component. To see some of the additional features of the custom component, let's go into the contacts details. So if we open up an existing component or existing contact, Jack Rogers, you can see that there's 4 collapsible wrappers on the screen: basics, contact info, org info, system info, and they're all set to open. Note that in this case, there is an email address and there is a business phone. And that plays a role as we move on to showing the next feature. When we go into Joe Smith does not have a business phone. So what you'll see here is that the contact info, this is the same pop-up, the same collapsible wrapper, but it's configured to not open the contact info because there is no information to show. So it would just take up screen real estate unnecessarily. If the user wants to go provide that information, they can expand it and go ahead and type in the phone number. But on an initial display, we have the component configured to not open the contact info because we don't have a business phone. So let's see how that's done. If we go into the pop-up itself, you'll see here that at the top we have the TFG pop-up controller, so that we're disabling the hide, the X, and we're also disabling the escape so that the only way to actually close the pop-up is via the close button. So we have control over what actions occur when the user closes. Then within the grid, we have those 4 collapsible areas that I mentioned: the basics, the org info, the contact info, and the system info. If we look at the collapsible wrapper for the contact info, what you'll see here is the basic tab has the show header set to conditionally. When you have the show header set to conditional, you get an new rendering categories that let you configure how to initially display the header and its collapsibility. So if I had it set to yes, you can see that those categories go away because we're always going to show a header, and we're either going to show it no, open, or closed as collapsible. But because we have it set to conditionally, we get these additional rendering categories. The way the rendering categories work, obviously you have your standard SQUID render conditions, and this is whether or not the component should show or not show. Works just like any other SQUID component. The show not collapsible, show open, and show collapse work slightly different. In the case of standard render conditions, if you don't have a render condition, SQUID treats that as we're always going to show that that component. In the case of the show conditions, we look for the first criteria or set of conditions that evaluates to true that has at least one condition. So in other words, if you interpret this as show not collapsible conditions, we don't have any conditions, so therefore it will never show not collapsible. Once we look at that, we would then look at the next category, show open conditions. Well, we show open when the phone is not equal to null. If that comes back as false, as in the case of the second contact, we go to the next category, show collapse conditions. If the phone equals null, show collapsed. If none of these conditions evaluate to true, or if none of these conditions have any conditions in them, they would all return false, and then we would not show the header. So the way you interpret the show wrapper header conditionally is I want to conditionally determine whether or not I'm going to show a header, and if I'm going to show a header, in what initial state that header is going to have, either not collapsible, open, collapsed, or if all those are false, then don't show the header. You can also see that while we're on a pop-up, we have our standard context that we can then configure like we would any other SQUID component. We also have the actions that we walk through on the accounts information, the accounts wrappers. We have advanced for CSS class and context basis and unique ID and styles as well.